Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to build an AI-powered SEO keyword researcher that saves you about 8 to 12 hours per content brief. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to be running through exactly how to build this system end to end. So you can use this for your business, whether you are scaling or whether you are just a single entrepreneur that is looking to use SEO to get more users. And you can use this video whether you are experienced in AI automations or you're a complete beginner. I'm going to cover everything. So setting up a Gumloop account, being able to connect AI models, integrate with different SEO tools, and effectively do the whole process that builds out this automation end to end. That means you can save a huge amount of time, but still get actually even better results than you would have been before. And honestly, the reason that I love this so much, and I've built this out for both of my companies, is that it just stops you having to do all of the repetitive stuff and basically means that you can just focus on your core business.
So firstly, just to run through a little bit of an overview, just to give a bit of context. So we're going to be building out this automation today, and this is an overview of what the process will look like. It looks a bit complicated, but I wouldn't worry. It's actually, I think, one, a very sophisticated system, and then two, actually quite a good one to get started with, even if you're a beginner, because it actually teaches you many different components. And it's not too challenging to build out, but is one of the more complex starter systems. So a good place to get started and learn. And what we're actually trying to do, we are building out an SEO content workflow that is looking at three main areas. First of all, it does all the keyword research for you. And then it's looking at difficulty of the keyword, CPC, and things like this. And then we'll do competitor analysis. So we're basically going to be scraping competitors' websites, understanding where the opportunity area is. And then we're going to be creating a content brief that can be actioned. And we'll actually be talking about the further automations we're going to be doing in the future after this as well, because there's many more parts of SEO that can also be automated. And I think just to go over this very briefly, you will all recognize the problems that already exist for the current SEO space. Huge amount of manual work, researching all of these keywords, going to every competitor website, understanding where the gaps are, actually doing that detailed analysis of figuring out what those gaps are based on all of them is also complex and challenging. And then, actually creating a really solid brief that's consolidated all these things together well and then actioning on it. Again, none of these hugely easy tasks and very time consuming. And then in terms of why I think this is such a great automation, it's basically removing every single piece that was repetitive and saving a huge amount of time. So, on average, I'm finding that I'm probably saving about 8 to 12 hours per SEO content brief. And by the way, when this automation is done, you do it in 30 seconds. And that means that you can also get not only save time, but you can get a much better output, because frankly, the AI is much better at doing and consolidating this analysis than I am, at least. That then allows you to basically scale your content creation, i.e. you are creating blogs, maybe you're refining your website. You can do that without actually losing any quality, because you are making sure that you're doing it in alignment to the brief that's been created. And then I think one of the more interesting ones is that you could always make sure that you're keeping on top of fresh keyword opportunity. Every time that you are putting in a query, you are getting out both the primary research, but then the long-term opportunities as well, and different areas you can focus on. So we'll go through that. But it just means that effectively you can really double down on owning this SEO content space. And I think the people that are mastering these systems now are going to be the ones that are best able to compete in any SEO niche. A quick thing to get started just in terms of stuff that you're going to need for this. So you will definitely want a Gumloop account, worth just setting up. They've got a free trial that you can use, so you don't need to pay initially. And you want to be able to access these models. Gumloop innately has these models where you can access them and you can access a range, which is great. You also want an SEO tool. I've chosen to use SEMrush. SEMrush is actually also in Gumloop, so it's great to use. You can use other ones. You can also have a content management system. I wouldn't worry too much about this one. This will become more important when we're doing the bit where we are automating, releasing those blogs, which we'll cover in future videos. Okay, so going to Gumloop, the first thing you're going to want to do is just click on a new flow, and then you'll be left with this canvas here. And a couple of things that are interesting. The first one is you can just name this notebook to anything. So we're going to go SEO keyword research demo. And then first of all, you've got this plus button, that library where you can just add everything. And we're going to go through the different things that you need to add. The other thing that is really, really good is the Ask Gummy feature. So you can get really, really far by asking AI what to do next. If you're ever stuck, if you ever have any questions, you can ask Gummy and it will basically be able to analyze what you've done, look at what you're trying to achieve if you've explained it, and then be able to suggest what to do next. Now, hopefully we come across an error and then we can use Ask AI to go through that. If we don't, one thing to be cautious of is that sometimes it can hallucinate, like with most AIs. So you will find that it will give you an idea and then that won't work. So you do need to do a bit of troubleshooting. I found that actually, if you use OpenAI's O3 model to actually get it to search on the web for these solutions, it will sometimes take Gumloop's docs and be able to then analyze those and get you maybe a better answer. So you want to go between the two. But this is, if you're ever stuck, use this feature. It's really good. Okay, so the first node we're going to want to add is the trigger. Now, you always have to start with the trigger. There always has to be something that kicks off the process. And what we're going to start in this case is called an input. So this just allows you to basically input text, and then that will start the flow. We're going to have three different inputs. We're going to have the primary topic, and you want to label these because you're going to want to reference them later. The target audience, and then we're also going to add the content type. Now, in this instance, what we can do is we're going to go through an example for Clip It. My mobile, a lot focusing on students, but also general learners that creates AI podcasts. And so really what the primary topic is what do you want the primary research around SEO to be? Our main focus is AI podcasts for studying. And then our target audience are students in the US. We will have a content type because we want to actually create mainly blog posts for now. What you then want to do is you want to have an input name. For this, I used primary topic, just repeat really. And that could be string. This value doesn't matter so much. Target audience string and content type string. So there we have it. Those are the three inputs, and it's worth saying that these can be anything. So whatever niche that you are working in, you will then be able to basically add in that primary topic, the audience you want to target, and the content type, and that's going to feed in every time. And so particularly for doing more iterations of keyword research, maybe instead of AI podcasts for studying, it's AI podcasts for commuting. And that then is going to give a different output for the keyword research. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to ask AI to create a keyword research prompt for us. So if you go in here and you just click Ask AI, you have this here. Now this has lots of different capabilities, and really what you're doing is you are just asking whatever AI model that you choose a prompt based on these inputs. Now, the model that's useful can change all the time, but in this instance, we're going to go with OpenAI's new O3 model, mainly because you're doing research and it's very good for those deep research tasks. And I've got this prompt that's available here. Now, I will also have a guide on this. If you comment on the video, I can send you a guide that has these prompts included. But effectively, this is asking for comprehensive SEO keyword research. You'll also notice that it's a list of primary keywords. It's a list of the long tail keywords. Those are really good for looking at opportunities that you can definitely get some traction in. And then it's also different questions that people might ask, and that's very good for adding to your website in things like FAQ section to trend for those as well. And something else that I've added is at the end of this prompt, which is something specific to Clip It. Now, you might find that you need to add this. If you have a specific thing that you want the AI to understand about your particular app, then make sure that you've clarified it in the prompt. In the instance of Clip It, there was some confusion around whether or not it was helping people to find podcasts that were created on AI or the best AI podcasts that were available. It's more about letting people create their own podcasts, and we use AI to do that. So it was just a clarification there. You may need to do the same for your products or service. Now, what you need to make sure that you're always doing in a tool like Gumloop is you are connecting, these are called nodes, and you want to connect the nodes together. And that's very simple. You just draw a string like this. Now, what you then do when you have connected a node is you're then able to tell them where you want that node to be inputted into the prompt. And I will show you how we do that in a second. But before we do that, there are some things that we need to add in first to make sure that the data is transferred in the right format, and they're called duplicates. Now, there's some detail behind this that I won't go into in this video. I think we could do it in future, but effectively you want the content that's created in a list. That basically then means that it can be read within this prompt. And the best way to do that is through this duplicate node. And it's very simple. All you do is you just connect it, and we actually want 3. So we want 1 for each one. And then once you are then able to connect those, you can then leave the list size match there, but then you just want to click on the input and you want to drag output from the primary research node into the input for this one. And actually, specifically, you want to give it a list size, which is standard 5 is fine. And what we're really doing here, and you'll notice this is the first time we're going to use this, and you will see this a lot, is you can think of every node as having an input and an output. When you click on the node, the input's going to appear here, and then the output that is then generated from that node is going to appear at the bottom. And so if you then draw this next line, you know that the output here is going to be drawn and be able to be used in this Ask AI field. So then when I have my prompt here, and it says, I need to create a comprehensive SEO research guide for the content about, that's when I want the primary topic to appear. So I know I can drag this output list and put it there specifically in the prompt. So that means it's going to draw the data that says AI podcasts for studying. So we're then going to do the same for target audience. So we're going to select the input. We're going to click that. That's going to be 5. And then we're going to connect it. And then we're going to be able to draw the target audience. And then we're going to do the same for the content type, where we click the output. We have a specific size. The size is 5. We draw it as an input. And then we have that added here. Sorry, moving these around like this. Now, what you can also do is maybe label these, because then you can better understand what they're relating to. So this is primary topic duplicates. This is target audience duplicate. And this is the content type duplicate. So when you then see each of these, you know you're drawing the right one into the right place within the prompt. So far, that's you taking all of those different inputs that are important for SEO and then creating that master prompt that is going to start to do that keyword research. And I've just had to move because my laptop was about to run out of battery. Now, next one that we want to build is we want to take that prompt and that primary research that's done, and then we want to check it on an SEO tool. So a tool like SEMrush that's then going to analyze all of those keywords. It's going to get the research that we want around keyword difficulty, search volume, CPC, some important data like that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look for SEMrush. Now the one we want is the keyword overview. So we're going to just pull that in. And basically what that's going to do is that's going to, in the background, access the SEMrush API, and it's going to pull that data. So the output specifically what we want, and you can really set these to whatever you choose. In this instance, I found the ones that are most useful for this research type are keyword difficulty, search volume, and then the CPC. So those are the ones that we bring in. And you can also filter on country, which is really good, particularly if you have a certain geography that you want to target. We are focused on the US market. And then what's going to happen is it is then going to take certain keywords and it's then going to analyze it. As you saw, we have lots of different keywords that are going to be generated. So we need to find a way to make sure that it's actually able to do that a number of times for each keyword that's relevant. And that's when you have this loop mode functionality. That basically means it's going to run something multiple times. And in addition, what then happens is because you've got this loop mode, you need to make sure of 2 things. One, the output from your AI prompt is giving it in the right format so that it can then be digested by SEMrush. And then you need to make sure that loop mode's on so that it continues to do that multiple times. So there's a few steps here, but it's not too complicated and it should make sense as we go through. So the first thing we want to add is a JSON file. And the reason we want that is because we want it to be able to take the output from the AI and then put it into a format that is readable by SEMrush. So we want to add one key here, which is primary keywords, like that. And then we're going to attach the string so that it's able to read it. Now, before we do that, sometimes you'll get it where there will be an output from your prompt. That means that it's not readable by the JSON reader. So sometimes what you want to do is you want it to take the data and then you want it to find areas that aren't in the right format and replace those. So you have something called a find and replace. So we want to add that into the middle and we want to connect that to the Ask AI, and then we want to connect that back to the JSON reader. Now, in our use case, and for this prompt, there are some specific phrases that we want to replace. The first thing we want to replace is dash, dash, dash JSON. And what we want it to do is actually just remove it every time that we find it. So you can just leave it blank and it will leave a gap there. And then the second thing we want to do is just replace every time that it comes with these dashes. Once you add those in, you can then activate the loop mode that's actually already on the Ask AI here. You can activate loop mode on the JSON reader as well. We then want to make sure that every input is connected. So we want to add the response list from the AI to this input. And then we want to add in the output from the find and replace to the JSON. Now, we've got it as a JSON reader, but then we need to make sure that it's getting the data in a string of text so that it's able to take each keyword individually and then be able to process it. And what we add between the JSON reader and the SEMrush keyword is a get list item. Now, this is great, and you use these quite a lot because it means that you could just get a list out of all the output that you've generated. So we just need to connect that, add the loop, put the primary keywords list in there, and then you can just leave the index to 0. Now, this then connects, and what we're then able to do is put the loop mode on, add the item list, and then what that's going to do is it's going to take that list, it's going to work on a loop, and it's going to look at every keyword individually for those outputs. You basically take the output from your Ask AI prompt and then get it to work in an individual format to output into SEMrush. Another node that's quite good to use is an error shield. Now, what this does is it basically means if you do ever end up getting an error, you can actually just pass it through a different way. And that basically just means that it stops the system from blocking if there ever is an issue. So I typically would just like put the SEMrush node into here, and it just means the whole thing will run more smoothly. Now, you don't need to put this on, but it just means that if you're ever finding an issue, I just wanted to make sure you're aware that there are these error shields that are available, and you just need to activate them and they will pass the data straight through. That's one area of the flow. So what we've just done is we've now taken the inputs, generated a prompt doing the primary key research, and then we're passing it into SEMrush that's gathering us data on those keywords. What we now want to do is we want to analyze our competitors and understand where the gaps are, and then be able to add that as part of our content brief. So what you have is you have nodes, which are scrapers, and they have specifically a website scraper. So these are the other ones here. And if you zoom in, it's very simple. All you have to do is you have to add a URL, and you can actually add as many of these as you want. In this example, I've got 5 different ones that were relevant for us, but you could add as many or as little as you choose. Web scrapers, when you're loading, do take a little bit longer and I believe more credit. So just be aware of how many you're adding and how much that costs. It's relatively negligible, but particularly compared to paying someone to do it. But there is a cost there. And then once you've added all the URLs of your competitors in there, you want to create a combined list. Now, you'll use these quite a lot. Effectively, as it says on the tin, you're going to take all of the extract and then you're going to combine that into a single source of data. So you want to just connect all of those. What you want to do is you want to take all of these inputs and then just add in each of the website content from different nodes. Once we've got that combined list, we then want to add Ask AI node. And if we connect this output, what we then want to add our prompt. Now, this is the prompt here. Basically says, analyze any primary keywords that they might be targeting, content gaps they may be missing, think about unique approaches that they're taking, and then questions they're asking, and then format the output into a structured analysis. So a lot you could put into here. This is one that I found that's been really effective. And all you then need to do is just get that combined list and pop it into there. Now that model needs to be changed. So you want that to be an expert model because we're doing research. That is the flow of how you are then scraping all your competitors' websites, combining that into a list and then getting that as an input into your prompt that's doing that competitor analysis. We're actually nearly at the end of this flow. So what you then want to do is you basically want to combine these two things together. So you want to take the keyword research, you want to take the competitor analysis, and you want to bring it together into one content brief. So I'm going to add another Ask AI node, have a particular prompt that has been working really well. And effectively what it says is it's based on that keyword research and on the competitor analysis. I want you to build that comprehensive keyword strategy that focuses on a few things. One is primary keywords. The next one is the long tail opportunities that have sort of lower competition. And the reason that's so interesting is particularly when you're starting out, some people may be more familiar with SEO than others. You don't want to just try and go after the most competitive areas. You want to, over time, build your strength around SEO in areas that are less competitive and then switch to more competitive keywords over time. We also have 5 questions that could be addressed. That's really good for you to add to your website. 2 areas that you then want to connect are this prompt here. So it just comes straight in. And then you also want to have your competitor prompt that comes straight in as well. And because I've also got an element of the prompt that is talking about what the analysis is actually on, I also link in the primary topic here, so the top, and what you want to do is you want to just draw it from the duplicate. So I just want to draw this all the way down here. Now I then just add these very simply. So as you can see here, this is the output from the primary topic. So it's competitor analysis for this particular topic. As you can see here, this is a good example of why you want to label your prompts, because it's not very clear to me whether this is the Ask AI for competitor research or not. So the word research, Ask AI, and then here I can add competitor and research, Ask AI. Now, as you can see, once I've done that, you can now see which one is the most relevant. So I can then take the competitor research one, just put it after that. And then I can take the keyword researcher and I can put it after that. Now, again, I'm going to switch the model here. I want it to be expert because it's going to be doing detailed research. And now that we've got that prompt, what we want it to do is we want it to output, and we want to give it to us in a digestible way where it's easiest for us to access. You could do that in lots of ways. It could be your Notion, it could be a Slack. In this instance, I'm going to keep it really simple and just put it into an Excel. First thing that we want to do is we want to look at Excel, which is actually Google Sheets. I'd suggest using that. And we're going to take the writer node. Then once you've added this node, I would then go to your Google Drive, make sure it's connected to Gumloop, and then I would just go and create that file. So it's already created, all you need to do is search for it. So once you refresh, you can then pick the file. So I called it demo, the demo SEO, see what appears. So yeah, I've got this one here. So I can just select that file and then that's brought in. Now, you then want to make sure it's got the right sheet and then it's doing the right action. So in this instance, I actually only have one sheet. So I'm going to just keep it to that. It's going to add a single new row. And that's all you need for now. And then what I'm going to do to make sure that it can actually read this data is I'm going to use one called the joined list items. Now, again, this is a very useful one. You might find that you need this. It basically just means that you're going to create a list of multiple different things, but you want to join that list together. And then I'm just going to add in the response list. And then in the specific join characteristics info that you want to give it, here is an overview, but effectively these are the sections you want it to join together, and you want it to join it together in the specific question. So it's basically very similar to the prompt that I got here. It just means that it's more readable and digestible when it goes into the Excel. Actually, something that I should have said is you do want to make sure that in the Excel, so you can see here, there's no options for the columns. And you need an option for the column to make sure that you can select it and knows where to put the data. So if you go back into your Excel, if you click output, it knows then where it's going to be able to put it. So if I make sure that's like refreshed and I go back in here, when I refresh this, I now have an output place that it can put it. Now, what that means is that you saw this appeared. It means that I can then connect this node together. And then what I can do is I can just jot the join text item here. And what this is going to do is it's going to basically mean that the data flow through and I'm going to have all the output put into that column. So Here's a little bit of overview. Now, typically what I do is obviously you want to make sure you're saving these throughout. You don't want to lose any data. And then you want to run tests to make sure that the data is feeding through. That's quite good best practice rather than kind of doing the full thing end to end. When you click run, what you're then going to find is it's going to tell you if you've got any errors and you can always correct those. Okay, so as you can see, it zooms in, you've got one error to fix. But for this instance, we want to have 0. We don't want anything there, so we can just leave that as 0. And then what you might find is if you're running this and you're actually working this through, you'll get an error, and then you can just like jump in and fix it because it'll show where it is. If we save, click run again, and then what happens is this area appears, and then it can see that it basically just starts doing all of the current running. So you've got some of the web scrapers working, the primary topics are kind of going through, it's then doing the keyword research. And then as you can see, it's gone through and it's done everything, including the keyword research there. You can see here how many credits it cost you and then the seconds that it took to run. Quite interesting because these are basically just, that's how much you're spending on doing this. And then it's good to do that compared to, what would you typically be spending to get an analyst to do this for you, or you having the time you'd have to spend to do it yourself. Now, let's jump to the output. So this is an example of the output. So you can see here, just me zoom in a bit, you've got all of your primary research here. It's taken the data in terms of search volume. It's then taken the difficulty of those keywords and it's analyzed all of them for these specific sections. So you've then got lower difficulties, as you can see, as you go down. And they're really interesting because you can start with these if they're relevant for you and then build up over time. These are interesting questions. It's taken this also from the competitor analysis as well. So you can see here, these are some of the things that people might be searching for. So you could also just directly have these as answers on your website. Some people might directly be searching for these, and so it helps with SEO. And then it even gives you like an overview, like content structure recommendation, and then even potential blog titles that you could use. And then I added at the end here a overview of an execution timeline. That might be really relevant if you're then bringing an analyst in. However, I actually think that you can automate this whole thing end to end. And so we're really starting with this keyword researcher, but actually I think there are huge opportunities to create a flow that basically does this completely end to end, where you take this research, you're then creating blogs. It creates those blogs based on all of the data that you've got, and then it's automatically posted to your website. You're also able to have it update that website and then even do backlink work for you. So we're going to cover all of these in future videos. But I think this is a overall start to kind of learn tools like Gumloop, to learn how these flows work. And I hope you found it really useful. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments. And particularly if you are even more experienced in this, there's maybe even better ways that you can optimize this flow. Would love to hear from you if you've got any ideas around how to do that. We also have our AI agent and automation community. So if you want to connect with other people that are building out these automations and scaling their businesses through that, then you can join us. And we're very active in there. You have me and my business partner that you could talk to the whole time. One other thing I would say is we've used these prompts, we found them to work for us, but you can obviously edit any of these prompts to get you the specific output that you want based on testing. And I definitely advise doing that.